This tip is a continuation of the one last week where we discussed right slanting make one increases. And just to refresh your memory, you determine the number of stitches you want before the increase on the right side. I want 2 because that's going to leave me a selvage stitch for seaming or picking up stitches. And I want to lift this guy onto the needle. And where I want this top leg of the stitch is facing towards the right. Now, looking at this thing right now, it looks like it would produce a twisted stitch, and it will. We're going to be twisting this loop, so I want to kind of pull this guy out, knit into it, and it's going to give me the right leg on the top leg pointing towards the right. Now, if you recall, one of the problems with this is it reduces the size of this stitch to the right in that first column of stitches, other than the selvage. To make the left slanting, and for most of the time it's usually the things on the left that are more tricky, but in this case the one on the left is the easiest. I work up to the point where I've got the number of stitches I want to be after the increase, and because I'm always mirroring, that means that if I add 2 here, I'm going to have 2 here. Otherwise it won't be symmetrical and it will look kind of tacky. I lift this lift up from the front to the back, and the top leg is pointing towards the left, and I have to twist it and knit the stitch. Gosh, I really don't care for bamboo needles much, but metal ones at this size are just so heavy. Alright, now notice that I've got that and it's pointing towards the left, and this one is pointing towards the right. That noise you hear is my cat running around. Something that's got her set off this morning. I'm going to knit another row so we can look at this. Now, the big problem with M1 increases, and if you're doing the basics class or the master's program, they might comment if, as I said last week, there is a column of stitches that has uneven tension to the right of the increase. The same thing happens on the left, but because the stitches to the right are in the body of the piece, it's not as noticeable. And there's my increase, and notice that that stitch is slightly smaller, but it's just not as noticeable as the ones in the column of stitches along the border. And the reason for that is if I were to seam this, let's say it were the inside of a sleeve, I would be seaming along here. I'd be seaming along here, and it's not going to match up. So for that reason, if you recall, the other way that I can make this increase is on the previous row to work a yarn over. And that's what I'm going to do. I've got to work 2 rows though. Now on the left you really don't need to worry about that over smaller stitch. For some reason it just blends in better, and if it doesn't, you can always use a tapestry needle and just kind of shift the yarn around, and that will make it look better. Now if I want my increase to be right here, remember I'm going to keep the same number of stitches consistently throughout the piece. I'm not going to try and line up this. I'm going to make sure that I have the same number of stitches on the side. So I will, and we're watching me untangle yarn. I'm going to work my 2 stitches, then I'm going to make a yarn over. And I'm going to just go ahead and work to the end. And I'll do the same thing just in case you need a reminder of how to do this on the right. I'm going to put a yarn over between the 3rd and the 2nd stitch. And there we go. And what this does is it reduces the potential for those little tiny stitches. Now it is going to leave a bigger hole, and you just have to decide which one you prefer best looking at your own work. I'm going to knit, knit, and there's that stitch. Now if I were to knit it like this, notice that that top leg of the stitch is pointing towards the left, so I need to reorient it and knit it, and then work to the next one. And I don't need to reorient it on the left, it's properly positioned. And there we go. Now I have those increases done, and it's not going to be pulling yarn from anywhere since I put the yarn over in first. And notice that that stitch, particularly on the right, that's what we need to be concerned about, is not small. So that is but do look, the hole is a little bigger. Okay, so that's just a decision you need to make. Personally, I prefer my tension to look better, particularly if this were on a neckline of a top-down sweater. That's where I'd really need to be concerned that I have this column of stitches looking very good. Now, on these size needles, nothing's going to look good. That is left slanting M1.